folks, welcome back to the Rec Room. It's episode 23 with Brian Rector as the host, per usual, live from the Rec Room in East Lansing. And today we got a really cool one. This is an episode that I've been excited to do for a lot of months. And a lot of things have happened. Life has gotten in the way. Things have moved and changed and shifted and adapted, but we're here. And I gotta say, Kayla, thank you for being here. This, folks, is a lady over there. I'm gonna get it right this time. That direction, on the podcast, that is a freshman volleyball player at Virginia Commonwealth, is a follower of Jesus, which, to tell you the truth, will be the main thing of our podcast today. And then she too hails from Virginia Beach. But we got connected, I won't sit here and say super well, but I will say I knew you and I could trust what you're about because somebody who I know and love and respect and admire and all those superlatives, Julia Bishop, was like, hey, Bri, like this is somebody who you got to talk to, who you got to interview, who you got to make sure that you know and invite on your show. So, without further ado, Kayla Foley, thank you for joining the Rec Room. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So you are in Virginia once more after hailing from the state, a little bit of time elsewhere, back at VCU. Talk to me as we're getting going here. Like, shoot, what are some of your thoughts about being in your home state again and competing for the Rams?
It's honestly so amazing. As much as it's just I don't even know. I love being able to have so many of my family and friends now, being able to actually come to my games, get to
Mm.
watch me so much more, and just really excited for the new chapter of my life that's about to start when we start games.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Mhm.
And I think, you just said something really important, which is that new chapters, they tend to happen, just in life as we're moving along. Like, how has your faith deepened? Because I know, as we've said, there have been some changes and you've had to make a move and head somewhere else. How has your faith deepened and your relationship with God grown through the recent months since, shoot, December? It's been not that long, but there's been so
Mhm.
much change. How have things with your faith changed and moved for you?
It's honestly changed so much because it's just helped me be able to rely on God's plan and just the future because obviously the future is so unknown. So when transferring from Michigan State, obviously there's so much unknown when entering that portal. And as an athlete, you don't really see anything that goes on in that portal.
Hmm.
It's just basically another round of recruiting with emails, phone calls with coaches, just the same old thing that you used to do back in high school. And so getting to just put all of my worries of the future and everything that was to come and whether I could still play volleyball at a high level and just put that all in God's hands just helped deepen my faith so much, and it just helped me to know that I was going to end up where God wants me to be, and that ended up being VCU.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think what you just said there, like, that's similar, what you said about going through the second kind of time of recruiting, right? And like
Hmm.
talking to some coaches and some things. That's very similar to other stories I've heard being in sports, in college, where folks do move, right? And they're like, it's crazy to go through this thing again because it's such a
Hmm.
process. Like, through all of that, what the coaches they're looking for is like a fit to culture and somebody who's skilled and somebody who has a drive and all these things. Like, what is your relationship to competition, right? And like trying to produce versus being somebody who worships to Jesus, right? And is somebody who isn't focused on performance, but about accepting the gift of salvation that we've been given. Given. I know there's such a stark relationship there of like performance
Hmm.
versus being a follower. So how has that come up for you?
Mhm. I feel like especially when I was younger, it was such a hard thing for me to not put volleyball at like the top of my life, at the top of my priorities, because especially back then, I'm trying to get recruited, get noticed by coaches, and obviously win. I want to be like the best team, want to be the best player.
Absolutely.
And so it was so hard sometimes to not focus on that and not worry about the mistakes or the end results and everything like that, and rather just focus on God. And I think that's something that's developed so much more, like, through prayer and just trusting Him and knowing that, like, yes, I wanna win, but that's not the ultimate goal at the end of the day. The ultimate goal
Mm,
is Him and His glory and glorifying Him in everything that I do. And so I just think the main thing for me now is to just show that through all my playing, through my sportsmanship, through
mm,
just not trying to worry. And yes, obviously, sometimes it comes down to me being a little bit nervous before games or during matches, but then just trying to recenter myself into Him and like focusing on God and just focusing on what He like using the gifts that He's given me and using that to just share His love.
mm, mm. You're awesome, by the way, for finishing that answer the way that you did, because my next question, fittingly, was going to be about volleyball as a gift. And this
Mhm,
idea that we're given spiritual gifts in our life, but we're also given gifts such as talents, right? In sports
mhm,
and in school and in, these different buckets. Like, when
mhm.
did you realize that volleyball would be a way for you to glorify him and to kind of worship and commune with God?
Mhm. I think, like, as much as I wanted it to happen earlier, it didn't really start happening for me till, like, my senior year of high school
Mm,
when, I don't know, I just think I started facing a little bit more anxiety on the court of just the
sure.
pressure of I did have, like, the title on me of being committed to Michigan State, and I had all this pressure on me of having to perform well all the time.
Mm,
And that's when I really started to notice, like, I can't be worried about this right now, and I need something to help take my mind off it. So that's when I started looking up the audience of one, and I started like really trying to research about that. And honestly, like, I'm still struggling with that, like, every single day of not trying to like idolize my sport and more just focusing on Him. Like, yes, my sport is important, but my faith comes before that. And so I actually like even here, I like last month I started doing even more research about audience of one and how can I actually like really show glorifying Him while I'm playing my sport, because I think like the biggest thing I want to try and achieve and like one of the biggest goals in my life is I love when people are able to notice that I'm a Christian without me telling
mm,
them. And I
mm,
think that like through my sport, obviously yes, the more success I get, like that'll also help me to create a bigger platform to actually share about Him.
mm.
And yeah.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I think that's so important is like having people being able to see that
Mhm,
tangibly we're living differently. Like,
mhm,
has there been a moment, has there been an example where you've seen somebody begin to ask you some things, begin to kind of probe at why you
mhm,
are, acting and working and living the way that you are?
mhm. Yeah, actually, so I would say it was actually with my boyfriend. We started dating last October, and he does not come from a family of Christians.
Hmm.
And so, and like about 3 months into us dating, he knew I went to church. And all of a sudden, like randomly, I'd never really brought up my faith around him. I just didn't want to make anything uncomfortable yet or like feel like him to be pressured at all.
Sure.
And he randomly asked me one day if he could come to church with me. And he started coming to church with me and started asking more questions about it. And it turns out he had actually tried to start learning more about faith like his freshman year of high school, but kind of fell out of it. And
Mm,
him and I just started like doing Bible studies together, praying together, and he actually ended up getting baptized a couple months ago. So it was just such an amazing feeling to have brought someone else in the faith, but also just it inspired me so much more in my faith because like seeing someone who has like not grown up as a Christian and not heard the stories of like Adam and Eve and like
sure.
Noah and the ark, like he has not heard anything and getting to see like the hunger of faith as like a new believer like gave me so much more hunger because I was like, there's so much more. I thought like I almost was a little bit satisfied in my faith, and I was like, no, there's so much more I can be learning
Mm,
right now.
mm.
So that's definitely one of like an amazing experience that I had.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Just out of curiosity, I'm curious. Don't have to share, no
Mhm.
obligation. But what is your
Mhm.
boyfriend's name?
Ryan, go
Okay.
CL.
That is so good. Shout out my man,
Mhm.
Ryan. Wow, wow, wow. That's super cool.
Yep.
Um, you know, I love what you said as well because
Mhm.
there's almost nothing better. There's no greater feeling than, being a part of God's plan in folks'
Mhm.
lives to bring them into his kingdom. It's like a really special thing
Mhm.
because and I know, we know that we can't change that heart. But what we can
Mhm.
do is we can have endurance, we can be steadfast, we can continually show up and be who we are as image bearers of
Mhm.
the cross, and then boom, it just shifts one day. That's
Mhm.
amazing that you said that. We were in, I wanted to share this. We were in Panama City, Florida for spring break, and
Mhm.
it was my first time. What we were doing down there was with crew ministry on campus. We were able to go out and share each day on the beach. And that was something that at first you get into it and you're kind of dipping a toe in, right? And you're like, I don't know, that's kind of uncomfortable. But myself and my friend Aiden here at State, we were able to lead somebody to pray to accept Christ during that week. And it's like, dang,
That's
like
amazing.
it just, there's something different tangibly about
Mhm.
walking through that. And as you said, seeing the desire to move forward
Mhm.
and to keep pressing on. It's just super special.
Mhm.
But I want to know, like, what is the culture of faith, if there is one, at VCU? And what are some of the ways that you've been able to, get into it while in Virginia for the last while?
Mhm. So I just like this when I first got here, one of my roommates actually is in FCA Fellowship of Christian
Okay,
Athletes.
sure.
So I did join that. So we meet every Monday, and
Yeah.
it's just honestly it's such a great experience because for me, not really many of my teammates, at least that I know of, are Christians, and so I did feel like a little bit like it was a little hard on me when I first got here
Sure.
because my old team, I had known people that I could talk about my faith with. And here I didn't feel like I had that. And FCA just totally brought that to me because I've gotten to meet so many different athletes, lacrosse players, field hockey players,
Mm,
that are just all very passionate about their faith. And like they all want to try and grow it even more. Like I know the lacrosse team just started doing a Bible study before their games. And it just inspires me a little bit more that like, if I hold out, then maybe I can also help bring some more people here to Christ as well.
mm, yes, most
Mhm.
certainly. And I think, shoot, we're called to that high standard, right? Of being
Mhm.
salt and light, like, you know, being different, like being,
Mhm.
in situations where we're in the world but not of it. I know, like,
Mhm.
one of the things that really was kind of eye-opening for me was just recently, Monday was St. Patrick's Day, and
Mhm.
seeing the pervasive culture of like going out to the bars and doing things
Mhm.
on campus at Michigan State. It was like, man, what are we doing here? Like, come
Mhm.
on. You just want to go to a rooftop and have a megaphone and go like, Jesus loves you. Like, come on.
Mhm.
But I resonate with what you said. And what about faith steps for you, Kayla? Is there any way that you can see yourself, taking a step of faith, making a move on behalf of the kingdom that is something you've been thinking about?
I'm trying to think. I mean, one thing is just for me, I am not a big social media person. Like,
Sure.
I don't share a lot on social media. And something I've actually been like talking about is like trying to make my social media more about like Christ and sharing more things,
Mm,
and just like simple as like a Bible verse on my story every day,
hmm.
or just like I do have a like an NIL deal with Underdog Athletics. It's like a
Sure.
small Christian like athletic brand, and
Hmm.
I actually was recently talking about like to my mom about actually starting to do more with that, like order more stuff, share more about them because they're attire and their like clothing is actually so like amazing. I love their message that they try to share. And so for me, I think a step of faith is being a little more like confident and taking a little more courage to share it, not just like through my words to people around me, but even more of to my followers, like that I have, like that don't see me every day and don't know me, because I want it to be known like through any platform or anything that I'm a Christian, and for it to be easy to find that, because it's one thing just putting a little Bible verse in your like bio on your Instagram profile, but it's another thing to like constantly preach his word through that. So
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know, I this is a conversation or a question that I've
mm,
been kind of mulling over asking with many different folks, but
mm,
oftentimes I have not had enough boldness to do it. So I wanted to do it today, while we're here. Like you spoke on just now, like
mm,
making that change of, having your social media influenced. And we've talked even in passing before about what it's like to get people to ask questions. And I've
mm,
noticed that many athletes, they are appearing on podcasts and like being asked questions by the media and like talking to broadcasters and getting
mm,
chances to speak on things, which Kayla is exactly why I want to ask you, is there any question, could be anything from life, that
mm,
you would desire to answer more or speak on more?
mm. I would just probably say like, how has your faith helped, or I guess how has my faith helped me to get like through some of the toughest challenges in my life? Because I just love like preaching on that, because like getting, I actually like recently we talked about this in FCA about how there's so many prayers that have been answered that you forget have been answered because you've moved on to the next like desire of a prayer.
That's
And
good.
so like that's why I love keeping like a prayer journal sometimes and getting to look back and be like, even like the smallest of prayers, and just be like, God answered that, God answered that, and just like almost like checking them off the box. And I just love getting to talk about like the toughest challenges, because those are the ones that when I'm facing a new challenge, I think back to that. I'm like, but God got me through that, so He can get me through this.
Mm,
And so getting to like talk through that, because I feel like that's when people obviously struggle with their faith the most, is when they're going through the hardest times, and that's when they start to doubt. And just being able to share more about like what actually helped me get through it and how God helped me through it. And it wasn't just, waiting it out. It was God actually making steps in my life for me to get through it.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so good. I think like that was awesome to hear that we do move on really fast
Mhm.
and we keep looking at what's next. Like if you, and this is a heavy question, but hear me out. If you had any advice to an athlete coming below you in terms of age and, looking to like get to college and do some of the
Mhm.
things you've been able to do, what would your advice be to him or her relating to staying present, like staying in the moment and, taking things on as they come and as they appear?
Mhm. My biggest thing is obviously like we worry so much about the future. I mean, a big thing I feel like in our culture these days is like the future, about getting married, getting a job, like everything about that, instead of like staying present in the moment right now. And a big thing like I've been trying to focus on is just like waiting, being patient about God's timing. Because like so much, actually, I saw this one that was really cool about like God's like blessings that happen in your life. And sometimes that God is with you through it, but it's like your obedience to actually make him make the blessing. Like you have to just
Mm,
wait it out a little more. And
mm,
as soon as you're obedient about it, then that's when you'll see like God's miracle. Cause sometimes for us, like we're just like, why God? Like, why hasn't it happened yet? Instead of just like listening to him and waiting and listening. Cause sometimes there's just something else like he needs, or just like his trust in you, instead of like the I need it to see a sign for me to believe that it's going to happen. Like sometimes you're just going to have to follow him blindly and take that step blindly. So I just think for like younger athletes who are maybe struggling about like getting recruited to college, stuff like that, just don't focus so much on that and just focus on like what's happening now, the next day, and just focusing on like God, because God is going to put you like so much. In my first recruiting process, he like closed and opened so many doors, And if you just continue to pray about it, like he will do the same because he closes the doors when he knows like it's not that time yet, or he opens the doors when it's ready for it. So it's so amazing to see him working that way.
Mm, yes, yes. One of the things that you just mentioned was about being obedient, which leads to blessings that will flow from him, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's so important because one of the things that I struggle with whenever I'm speaking to non-believers is whenever they say, whenever there's the mindset of when things in my life are bad, I get to point the finger at God. But when things are good, I get to say that it was on my strength that it happened. It's like,
That's so good.
what are we
Hmm.
doing here? Like, come
Yeah.
on. Like, you're missing the ball, dang it.
Hmm.
I had to say that thing. I was like, man,
Hmm.
something you just said convicted me to say that.
Hmm.
So disappointed when I hear that. And it's remarkable how often that comes up because it's like, no, man, I don't have any strength. I mean, I am
Hmm.
nothing if not
Hmm.
for my understanding of the word and my like reliance and grip on the rock of Christ.
Hmm.
Um, Here's where I want to go before we get out of here. I really appreciate your time chatting, and I do want to cover a couple more things before we get out of here. What are some of your like favorite slash most influential verses or passages from Scripture?
Mhm. My probably my ultimate favorite is Joshua 1:9.
Mhm.
Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That's my confirmation verse. I'm a Lutheran, so when I got confirmed, that was my verse, and I just
Yeah.
think that always just reminds me of yes, we can't see God, but He is always with us,
Mm,
and I think He also presents Himself in so many different ways to like different people, and I just think for me, like just remembering like He will present Himself in certain ways for me, like a lot of the times, it's just like I stop and I notice something where I'm like, wow, like God just worked the smallest thing in my life, but you would have never known if you didn't like stop and think about it.
sure.
Um, Another verse I really like is Romans 8:18. That
Mhm.
the pain that you've been feeling cannot compare to the joy that is to come. That one really got me through the transfer process because I just was thinking about, yes, I'm struggling a lot. I'm feeling a lot of stress because the transfer process is so much faster than like normal high school recruiting. Like you have less than a month to get recruited somewhere else versus high school where you have 2 or 3 years to do it. And so it just reminds me of I always like remind myself of this one quote that I've seen that like God gives the toughest battles to the strongest warriors.
Mm,
So whenever I'm having like a tough time, like come on God, bring it on. Like I can take it. I know someone else may not be able to take it, but like I can take it. So just like give it to me. I can do it.
yes.
Um yeah, I really like those. My favorite story, I would say, would be just Job's story, how
Mm,
everything got taken away from him
mhm.
and he still kept his faith. And I actually like recently read the book of Job and just hearing like because for me when I like had heard of Job's story before, I thought like he just kept his faith always, but getting to actually read it and see, yes, he did have times of doubt in God,
Yes.
but ultimately he still believed in God and knew like he just had to stick with his faith because then he got even more than he had before.
Yeah.
So those have always been the ones that always come to mind, especially when I'm going through a tough time.
Mm, hmm hmm How do you feel, Miss Foley, about doing a rapid fire segment called Rolling Loud on the Rec Room? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Cool, 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 cool. So I got a couple questions for you. We'll just keep it rolling, like Rolling Loud. It's good. So as we begin here with rapid fire, what would you say are three words to describe your current life?
I would say peaceful, grateful, and excited.
Okay. Where does
Mhm.
your peace come from?
God, completely God. Just like walking, like I love to go on walks, and finally the weather's nice here, so it's nice to actually go on walks. But just looking around and just seeing all that God has helped me get through and where He's put me now, and just being so grateful for it all.
Mm, most certainly.
Mhm.
Most certainly. Miss Foley, if you could play volleyball anywhere in the world, it could be on a mountaintop, it
Mm.
could be on a beach somewhere. Where would you play volleyball?
Definitely on a beach somewhere, maybe Hawaii.
Okay.
I love the beach. I'm a big summer beach, warm weather girl. So
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere on a nice beach, hopefully on a tropical island.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And then this one's heavier, but I gotta hear it. Uh, we've seen women's sports, both, and volleyball be grown and enhanced so much in recent years. What is your take on kind of what's happening, given that you're in it? And how do you think that it can continue to move and grow in the ways that it has?
I mean, I think it's so amazing, especially with having like professional volleyball now in America. And I mean, one of my old teammates, Nani, is
Hmm.
down in Orlando right now, and it's so amazing to see her like accomplishing that and just see her be able to perform in like in her country still where her family can come watch her play because I
Yes.
mean obviously in the past people would be overseas in Europe or something and so it's not like many of the family can see them play so getting to still play the sport they love even after they graduate is just so amazing and especially when Nebraska had their game in the football stadium breaking that record that was so amazing to just see that and just see everything come around and for volleyball to finally be noticed even more and even just women's sports in general I just think having them be more publicized and for obviously it to be more broadcasted on the internet is just
Mm,
so amazing like just being able to have easier access to their games getting to watch the pro volleyball federation on YouTube is just so amazing to watch my old teammates and just watch all the amazing players I've always looked up to.
hmm. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what does an off day look like for you?
Off day. Well, I like to go to my 7:30 cycling class normally. That is something I just started doing. I'm not a big cycler, but they have a free cycling class here, and I still like to do a little bit of working out on my off days, so I like doing that. Definitely spending a lot more time with God because obviously on my days that I practice and lift, it gets a little bit busy, and so obviously I feel like I can devote more time to Him because my biggest thing is that He should as much as I spend on school and volleyball, I should also be spending time growing my faith
Mm,
um, and just resting, trying to sleep, trying to recover, make some good meals. And
yeah.
that's basically it.
And then lastly, before we get out of here, who are some folks that you would want to shout out?
My mom, my sister, because they've just always been supporting me through it all. I mean, especially through the transfer process, they have been so supportive. And it's so nice. My sister lives an hour away from me now in Fredericksburg.
Mm.
So I get to see her much more often. Um, Shout out Julia Bishop, I guess, because she's kind of cool. I'll give her the shout out. She deserves it. Um, I guess, I mean, I already gave my boyfriend a shout out, so I can
Sure.
shout out him as well. And Jesus, I'll give him a shout out because, you know, he's the one that deserves the most praise. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kayla, thank you for joining the Rec Room. This has been episode 23 with Brian Rector and Kayla Foley today. Appreciate you.
thank you so much.